Sarah Martinez had always been the reliable one. At 28, she worked double shifts at the emergency department of Mary's hospital while pursuing her nursing degree online. Her small apartment felt more like a temporary storage unit than a home, with medical textbooks scattered across every surface and empty coffee cups marking the hours she spent studying between her shifts. The morning that would change everything started like any other. Her alarm buzzed at 5:30, cutting through the darkness of her studio apartment. She rolled out of bed, her feet hitting the cold linoleum floor as she fumbled for her scrubs hanging on the back of her bedroom door. The navy blue uniform had seen better days, with small bleach stains from countless sanitizing procedures and the fabric worn thin from endless washing cycles. In the tiny kitchenette, she prepared her usual breakfast of instant oatmeal and black coffee. The local news droned from her old television, reporting traffic conditions and weather updates that she barely registered. Her mind was already at the hospital, running through the patient charts she had reviewed the night before and the medication schedules that needed attention. The bus ride to work took 45 minutes through the city's early morning chaos. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the urban landscape blur past while reviewing for her upcoming pharmacology exam. Other passengers dozed or scrolled through their phones, but she used every spare moment for studying. Her determination to advance from medical assistant to registered nurse consumed every aspect of her life. Mary's emergency department buzzed with controlled urgency even in the early hours. Sarah clocked in at 7 sharp, tying her dark hair back in a practical ponytail before checking the assignment board. Room assignments, patient updates, and supply inventories filled her morning routine. She moved efficiently between patient rooms, taking vital signs, updating charts, and assisting the nurses with procedures. Doctor, the lead emergency physician, had noticed Sarah's exceptional dedication over the past 2 years. While other medical assistants performed their duties competently, Sarah consistently went beyond expectations. She memorized patient histories, anticipated needs before being asked, and maintained composure during the most chaotic emergency situations. The afternoon brought its usual influx of patients. A construction worker with a suspected broken arm sat in room 3, while an elderly woman experiencing chest pains occupied room 7. Sarah moved between them efficiently, ensuring comfort measures and monitoring vital signs while the medical team determined treatment plans. During her brief lunch break, Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria with her textbooks spread across the small table. She ate mechanically while reviewing respiratory assessment techniques for her evening clinical skills exam. Other employees chatted at nearby tables, but she remained focused on her studies, occasionally highlighting important passages or making notes in the margins. The afternoon shift supervisor, Tors, had worked at Mary's for 15 years and recognized exceptional potential when she saw it. She had been watching Sarah's performance closely, noting how the young woman handled pressure situations with remarkable calm and competence. Knew that Sarah's current role as medical assistant barely utilized her capabilities. As the evening approached, emergency calls increased. An ambulance arrived with a teenager who had suffered a severe allergic reaction, requiring immediate intervention. Sarah assisted the medical team seamlessly, anticipating their needs and providing critical support without being directed. Her hands remained steady as she prepared medications and monitored the patient's response to treatment. The teenager's parents arrived in a state of panic, demanding answers and updates that the medical team could not yet provide. Sarah stepped forward naturally, speaking to them in calm, reassuring tones while explaining the treatment process in terms they could understand. Her ability to communicate complex medical information clearly impressed both the family and the medical staff. Doctor observed this interaction from across the emergency bay, making mental notes about Sarah's natural leadership abilities and clinical instincts. The young medical assistant possessed qualities that typically took years to develop, yet she demonstrated them consistently in high-stress situations. As her shift neared its end, Sarah completed her final patient rounds and updated all necessary documentation. Her attention to detail ensured that the night shift would have comprehensive information about each patient's condition and treatment progress. She never left tasks incomplete or transferred problems to the incoming staff. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt longer than usual as exhaustion settled into her bones. 12-hour shifts followed by 3 hours of evening classes had become her normal routine, but lately, The physical and mental demands felt increasingly overwhelming. She unlocked her aging Civic and sat for a moment in the driver's seat, gathering energy for the drive home. Traffic moved slowly through the city streets as rush hour extended into the evening. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from her study group, reminding her about their weekend review session for the upcoming comprehensive exam. She responded quickly at a red light, confirming her attendance despite knowing it meant sacrificing her only day off. Her apartment felt especially quiet after the controlled chaos of the emergency department. Sarah microwaved leftover pasta and settled at her small dining table with her laptop, logging into her online nursing program for the evening lecture. The professor's voice droned through her computer speakers as she took detailed notes, occasionally pausing to look up unfamiliar medical terminology. The lecture covered advanced cardiac life support protocols, information she would need to master before her clinical rotation in the intensive care unit. Sarah rewound certain sections multiple times, ensuring she understood every concept completely. Her commitment to excellence meant accepting nothing less than thorough comprehension of every topic. By 11:30, her eyes burned from staring at computer screens and textbook pages. She closed her laptop and prepared for bed, setting her alarm for another early morning shift. Sleep came quickly despite her racing mind, which continued processing the day's medical cases and study material even as unconsciousness took over. This cycle had continued for months without variation. Sarah's dedication impressed her supervisors and colleagues, but the relentless pace was beginning to exact a toll that she refused to acknowledge. Her social life had disappeared entirely, replaced by an unwavering focus on advancing her career and securing a better future. The weekend brought no respite as she attended study sessions, completed clinical hours, and worked an additional shift to help cover staffing shortages. Sarah had convinced herself that this intense period was temporary, that once she completed her nursing degree, life would become more balanced and manageable. But deep beneath her determined exterior, stress and exhaustion were accumulating like pressure in a sealed container. The warning signs remained subtle at first: occasional headaches, difficulty sleeping despite exhaustion, and a persistent feeling that she was barely keeping pace with her commitments. Sarah dismissed these symptoms as normal consequences of her ambitious schedule. Monday morning arrived with familiar urgency as her alarm pierced the darkness once again. She prepared for another day at the hospital, unaware that the events about to unfold would test every limit she thought she could endure and ultimately change the trajectory of her entire career. The chaos began before Sarah even reached the emergency department doors. Ambulance sirens wailed in the distance as she hurried across the hospital parking lot, and she could see the red and blue lights reflecting off the building's glass entrance. Something major was happening, and her stomach tightened with anticipation. Inside, the emergency department buzzed with intense activity. Multiple trauma bays were being prepared simultaneously, while staff members moved with practiced urgency. Doctors stood near the nurses' station, coordinating with the incoming ambulance crews over the radio. Sarah quickly checked in and immediately joined the preparation efforts without waiting for specific instructions. The first ambulance arrived carrying victims from a multi-vehicle accident on the interstate highway. A family of 4 had been traveling to visit relatives when their sedan was struck by a speeding truck that had run a red light. The father suffered severe chest trauma, the mother had sustained head injuries, and their 2 young children were in critical condition with multiple fractures and internal bleeding. Sarah found herself assigned to assist with the 8-year-old daughter, Emma, whose injuries were extensive but not immediately life-threatening. The little girl was conscious but terrified, calling for her parents who were being treated in adjacent trauma bays. Blood stained her torn dress, and her left arm was clearly fractured, bent at an unnatural angle. Working alongside Dr. Williams, the pediatric emergency specialist, Sarah helped stabilize Emma's condition while providing emotional support. She spoke softly to the frightened child, explaining each procedure in simple terms while monitoring her vital signs and preparing necessary medical equipment. The girl's wide brown eyes searched Sarah's face for reassurance that everything would be all right. The second ambulance brought the truck driver, who had suffered minor injuries but was heavily intoxicated. He became belligerent and combative when medical staff attempted to examine him, shouting inappropriate comments about the accident victims and showing no remorse for the destruction he had caused. His blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit. As Sarah worked with Emma, she could hear the truck driver's loud voice from the next trauma bay, making callous remarks about the family he had nearly killed. His words cut through her professional composure like knives, especially when she looked down at the innocent child whose life had been forever changed by his reckless actions. The father's condition deteriorated rapidly despite aggressive intervention. Internal bleeding from his chest trauma overwhelmed the medical team's efforts to stabilize him. Sarah watched Doctor work frantically to save his life, while knowing that his wife and children waited in nearby trauma bays, unaware of how serious his injuries truly were. Emma's vital signs remained stable, but she continuously asked for her parents with increasing distress. Sarah maintained her calm exterior while answering the child's questions honestly, but gently, never revealing the severity of her family's condition. She held Emma's uninjured hand while nurses inserted an IV line and prepared her for surgery to repair her fractured arm. The emergency department's social worker arrived to assist with the family situation, but she was overwhelmed with multiple crisis cases from the accident scene. Sarah took on additional responsibilities, communicating with Emma's relatives who were driving frantically to the hospital and coordinating with Child Protective Services to ensure proper guardianship arrangements. Hours passed in relentless intensity as the medical teams fought to save lives and stabilize conditions. Sarah moved between patients, assisting wherever needed while maintaining her primary focus on Emma's care. The little girl's surgery went well, but she woke up asking for her parents with heartbreaking persistence. The tragic news came during Sarah's brief dinner break. The father had succumbed to his injuries despite hours of intensive intervention. The mother remained in critical condition with severe brain trauma, and her prognosis was uncertain at best. 2 young children had essentially become orphans in a single afternoon due to one man's irresponsible choices. Sarah returned to Emma's bedside feeling emotionally shattered, but maintaining her professional demeanor. The child's aunt had arrived from 2 states away, her face streaked with tears as she learned about the accident's devastating impact on her brother's family. Sarah helped facilitate their reunion while suppressing her own overwhelming emotions. Meanwhile, the intoxicated truck driver had been treated and released to police custody. He showed no genuine remorse for the destruction he had caused, instead complaining about his own minor injuries and the inconvenience of his arrest. His callous attitude toward the suffering he had inflicted filled Sarah with an anger she struggled to contain. The next morning brought additional challenges as Emma's condition required ongoing monitoring and her emotional trauma became more apparent. The child woke from nightmares calling for her parents, and Sarah spent extra time providing comfort and reassurance. Her professional duties expanded beyond medical care to include emotional support for a grieving child. Doctor noticed Sarah's exceptional dedication during this crisis and the way she naturally assumed leadership roles without being directed. Her clinical skills were impressive, but her emotional intelligence and ability to connect with patients under extreme stress demonstrated qualities that distinguished her from other medical assistants. The following days blurred together as Sarah continued caring for Emma while managing her regular responsibilities. The child's recovery progressed physically, but her emotional healing would require extensive time and professional support. Sarah coordinated with social workers, child psychologists, and Emma's extended family to ensure comprehensive care plans. Emma's aunt, Martinez, was a single mother herself, working 2 jobs to support her own teenage son. Taking custody of 2 traumatized children while managing her existing responsibilities presented overwhelming challenges. Sarah found herself providing unofficial counseling and support too as she navigated this impossible situation. The mother remained in the intensive care unit with minimal brain function. Medical teams had exhausted their intervention options, and difficult decisions about her long-term care needed to be made. Sarah attended family meetings to provide information about Emma's condition and helped coordinate communication between different medical departments. During this period, Sarah's own breaking point approached rapidly. She worked extra shifts to maintain continuity of care for Emma while attending her nursing classes and completing clinical requirements. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford, and proper meals were replaced by quick snacks grabbed between patient visits. Her academic performance began suffering as exhaustion clouded her concentration during lectures and clinical rotations. Sarah made uncharacteristic errors in her assignments and struggled to maintain the high standards she had set for herself. The pressure of maintaining excellence in all areas of her life was becoming unsustainable. The final straw came during a particularly challenging week when Emma developed complications from her surgery. An infection at the surgical site required additional procedures and extended her hospital stay. Sarah volunteered to work extra hours to ensure continuity of care, despite already being scheduled for maximum shifts. Her own health began deteriorating from the relentless pace. Persistent headaches evolved into debilitating migraines, and her hands developed a slight tremor from exhaustion. Sarah dismissed these symptoms, convincing herself that they were temporary consequences of the current crisis situation. Emma's aunt noticed Sarah's dedication and expressed gratitude for the exceptional care her niece was receiving. She had no way of knowing that Sarah was sacrificing her own well-being to provide this level of support, or that the young medical assistant was approaching a complete physical and emotional breakdown. The crisis reached its peak when Sarah collapsed during her shift while preparing Emma's evening medications. One moment she was standing at the medication cart, double-checking dosages, and the next she was lying on the floor with concerned colleagues gathered around her. The official diagnosis was exhaustion and dehydration, but everyone recognized the deeper issue. Doctor made the difficult decision to order mandatory time off for Sarah, despite knowing how much Emma and other patients had come to depend on her care. The emergency department could not afford to lose such a valuable team member permanently due to burnout and overwork. Sarah's collapse sent shockwaves through the hospital's administrative offices, where her exceptional performance had been noted by several department heads. Her dedication and clinical skills had caught the attention of people in positions of significant authority, including someone whose opinion could change her entire career trajectory. Colonel James had retired from the Army Medical Corps 3 years earlier after 25 years of distinguished service. His transition to civilian hospital administration brought military precision to Mary's operations, where he served as Chief of Medical Staff. The Colonel, as everyone respectfully called him, had seen countless medical professionals throughout his career, but few had impressed him as much as the young medical assistant whose dedication had recently come to his attention. When reports reached his office about Sarah's collapse, Colonel was reviewing quarterly performance evaluations. Doctors' detailed report about the multi-vehicle accident response highlighted Sarah's exceptional performance under extreme pressure. Her clinical skills, leadership instincts, and emotional intelligence during the crisis had impressed the entire medical team. The Colonel had served in combat zones where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. He recognized the qualities that distinguished exceptional medical personnel from merely competent ones. Sarah Martinez possessed the rare combination of technical skill, emotional resilience, and natural leadership that he had seen in only the most outstanding military medics. After reading the incident reports and performance evaluations, Colonel made an unusual decision. Instead of simply acknowledging Sarah's excellent work through normal administrative channels, he chose to investigate her background more thoroughly. What he discovered reinforced his initial assessment of her exceptional potential. Sarah's academic records showed consistent excellence despite her challenging circumstances. Her nursing instructors praised her clinical judgment and theoretical understanding. Colleagues consistently rated her as reliable, competent, and naturally suited for advanced responsibilities. Even her financial aid records revealed someone making significant personal sacrifices to advance her education. The Colonel understood the military principle that exceptional soldiers often push themselves beyond sustainable limits in pursuit of excellence. Sarah's collapse reminded him of young medics who had driven themselves to exhaustion in service of others. Such dedication deserved recognition and support, not just medical treatment. When Sarah returned to work after her mandatory rest period, she found a message requesting her presence in the Chief of Medical Staff's office. The summons filled her with anxiety, assuming that her collapse had somehow jeopardized her employment or academic standing. She had never met Colonel personally, knowing him only by reputation as a respected but formidable administrator. The Colonel's office reflected his military background with its organized efficiency and understated professionalism. American flag, medical certifications, and military commendations adorned the walls alongside photographs from his Army service. Sarah knocked nervously on the door, unsure what to expect from this meeting. Colonel's appearance commanded immediate respect. Despite being in his early 50s, he maintained the bearing and fitness standards of his military career. His graying hair was precisely trimmed, and his civilian suit was pressed with military precision. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. The conversation began formally, with the colonel reviewing Sarah's recent performance during the emergency crisis. He spoke about her clinical competence, leadership instincts, and emotional intelligence in terms that surprised her with their specificity and insight. Clearly, he had thoroughly investigated her work and understood its significance. Sarah listened nervously as he described her actions during Emma's care, her coordination with family members, and her ability to maintain professional composure under extreme pressure. The colonel's assessment was more detailed and perceptive than any performance review she had ever received. He understood aspects of her work that she had never articulated herself. Then the conversation took an unexpected direction. Colonel began sharing his own experiences with exceptional medical personnel during his military career. He spoke about young medics who possessed natural talents that exceeded their formal training, and how the military had developed programs to accelerate their advancement. The colonel's proposal came as a complete surprise. Mary's Hospital, in partnership with the State University's nursing program, was launching an accelerated degree completion program for exceptional students. The program would provide full financial support, flexible scheduling, and guaranteed employment upon graduation. Sarah would be the first candidate considered for this prestigious opportunity. The offer included immediate promotion to senior medical assistant with increased responsibilities and compensation. She would work directly with department heads on special projects while completing her nursing degree in an accelerated. Upon graduation, she would be guaranteed a position as a charge nurse in the emergency department. Sarah struggled to process the magnitude of this opportunity. Everything she had worked toward through years of sacrifice and determination was being offered as recognition of her exceptional performance. The financial stress that had dominated her life would disappear, replaced by educational support and career advancement. Colonel explained that he had served in situations where identifying and developing exceptional talent could mean the difference between mission success and failure. He recognized similar qualities in Sarah that had distinguished the most outstanding medical personnel in his military experience. Her dedication during the recent crisis had simply confirmed what her performance record had already suggested. The program would require her to maintain the same high standards that had brought her to his attention. She would serve as a role model for other aspiring medical professionals while completing advanced training in leadership and emergency medicine. The accelerated pace would be challenging, but her proven ability to excel under pressure made her an ideal candidate. The colonel also addressed her recent collapse directly, explaining that truly exceptional performers often pushed themselves beyond sustainable limits. The military had learned to recognize and prevent such situations by providing appropriate support systems. The new program would ensure that her dedication was channeled productively without compromising her health or well-being. As Sarah absorbed the details of this unexpected opportunity, she thought about Emma, who had returned home with her aunt but continued sending hand-drawn thank you cards to the hospital. The little girl's recovery had progressed remarkably well, both physically and emotionally, partly due to the exceptional care she had received during her most vulnerable period. The colonel's offer represented validation of everything Sarah had sacrificed to reach this point in her career. Her long hours of study, financial struggles, and relentless pursuit of excellence had been noticed by someone with the authority to change her life dramatically. The recognition felt almost surreal after years of quiet dedication. Colonel concluded the meeting by giving Sarah 1 week to consider the offer and discuss it with her family or advisors. He emphasized that this opportunity reflected confidence in her abilities and potential, not charity or sympathy. The hospital was investing in her because they believed she would become an exceptional nurse and leader. Walking back to the emergency department, Sarah felt overwhelmed by the conversation's implications. Her colleagues noticed her stunned expression, but respected her obvious need for privacy to process whatever had transpired in the administrator's office. Doctor smiled knowingly, having been consulted about Sarah's qualifications before the meeting. That evening, Sarah called her parents in Texas to share the unexpected news. Her mother wept with joy and pride, remembering the determined young woman who had left home with ambitious dreams and limited resources. Her father, a construction worker who had supported her education despite financial hardships, expressed amazement at how far his daughter's dedication had taken her. The decision required careful consideration of the increased responsibilities and accelerated timeline. Sarah had proven she could excel under pressure, but this opportunity would demand sustained excellence over an extended period. The Colonel's faith in her abilities was both inspiring and intimidating. Emma's aunt called that same evening, coincidentally, to provide an update on both children's progress. Emma had returned to school and was receiving counseling to process her trauma. Her brother, who had suffered less severe injuries, was adapting well to his new living situation. Credited Sarah's exceptional care during their darkest period with giving the children hope and stability. After a week of consideration, Sarah returned to Colonel's office with her decision. She accepted the opportunity with gratitude and determination to prove worthy of the confidence being placed in her. The Colonel welcomed her acceptance with satisfaction, knowing that he had correctly identified someone destined for exceptional achievement. The accelerated nursing program began immediately, with Sarah balancing her new senior medical assistant responsibilities with intensive coursework. Her colleagues noticed the change in her status and responsibilities, but also her renewed energy and sense of purpose. The recognition and support had transformed her from someone approaching burnout into someone energized by new possibilities. 6 months later, Sarah graduated at the top of her accelerated nursing class with highest honors. Colonel attended her graduation ceremony, watching with satisfaction as she received multiple awards for academic excellence and clinical competence. Her transformation from exhausted medical assistant to confident nursing professional validated his decision to intervene. On her first day as charge nurse in the emergency department, Sarah thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. A devastating accident, a little girl's need for exceptional care, and her own breaking point had somehow combined to bring her talents to the attention of someone who could change her trajectory completely. Colonel's recognition had transformed not just her career, but her understanding of how dedication and excellence could create opportunities beyond anything she had imagined. The military leader who had spent his career identifying and developing exceptional talent had given her the chance to fulfill potential she had never fully recognized in herself.